Welcome back to Lifelong Echoes. Today we're mastering English through the incredible story of Alexander Graham Bell. But this isn't just about inventing the telephone. This is a story of forbidden love, a near-death race against rival inventors, a dramatic courtroom battle, and three words that changed history forever. Mr. Watson, come here. Here's how today's shadowing works. I'm going to tell this story at a slower, clear pace perfect for shadowing. Your job is simple. Speak along with me throughout the entire story, matching my rhythm and emotion. Shadow the whole story as you listen. That's it. Why this works? Your brain learns in two ways. First by understanding, then by doing. Listen, then shadow. Comprehend, then practice. Easy and effective. Ready? Let's dive into one of history's most dramatic invention stories. March 10th, 1876. Boston, Massachusetts. A cramped attic workshop. 29-year-old Alexander Graham Bell is absolutely broke. His investors are threatening to pull out. His rival, Elisha Gray, is racing to patent a similar device. Worse, Bell has just spilled corrosive battery acid all over his leg, and it's burning through his clothes. In pain and desperation, he shouts into his experimental device, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." Down in the basement, his assistant Thomas Watson hears something impossible through the receiver. Not the usual crackling static, but clear human words. Watson's hands are shaking as he runs up the stairs, nearly tripping in his excitement. When he bursts into the attic, he's breathless. "Mr. Bell, I heard you. I heard every word you said." Bell stares at him, hardly daring to believe it. After 1,000 failures, hundreds of sleepless nights, and mounting debt that threatened to ruin him, he'd finally done it. The human voice had just traveled through wire for the first time in history. But this victory came at the last possible moment. If Bell had been just hours slower, his name would be forgotten, and someone else would have claimed the prize. This is the story of how a teacher of deaf children became one of history's greatest inventors. It's a story of love, rivalry, and the race to capture the human voice. But it begins far from that Boston attic in the cold hills of Scotland. Young Alec Bell grew up in a very strange house in Edinburgh. While other families talked about normal things at dinner, the Bells discussed the mechanics of the human throat, the physics of sound waves, and how to teach deaf people to speak. Alec's father was obsessed with something he called visible speech, a system of weird symbols that looked like alien writing. Each symbol showed exactly how to position your lips, tongue, and throat to make any sound in any language. It sounds crazy, but it worked. Deaf people who had never spoken a word in their lives were suddenly able to talk. But Alec's childhood wasn't just academic curiosity. It was shadowed by death. When Alec was a teenager, tuberculosis swept through his family like a silent killer. First, his older brother Edward died, coughing up blood. Then his younger brother Melville died the same horrible way. Alec watched helplessly as the disease destroyed his brothers, and he knew he could be next. His mother, terrified of losing her last son, made a desperate decision. We're leaving Scotland. All of it. The fog, the dampness, the death. We're going to Canada where the air is clean and you can breathe. In 1870, the Bell family arrived in Brantford, Ontario. The fresh air saved Alec's life, but he was restless. He needed purpose. He needed to use his father's methods to help people. So Alec moved to Boston, where he opened a school for deaf children. One day, a girl walked into his classroom who would change his life forever. Her name was Mabel Hubbard. She was beautiful, intelligent, and completely deaf. Alec fell in love with her instantly. But there was a problem. Mabel's father, Gardner Hubbard, was a wealthy Boston lawyer who thought Alec was just a poor Scottish teacher with no prospects. "You want to marry my daughter?" Hubbard said coldly. "What can you offer her? A teacher's salary? A life of poverty?" Alec was heartbroken but determined. He would prove himself. He would create something so revolutionary that even Gardner Hubbard would have to respect him. Late at night, after teaching all day, Alec worked on a crazy idea, transmitting the human voice through wires using electricity. Mabel believed in him when no one else did. She would sneak into his workshop late at night, bringing him food when he forgot to eat, encouraging him when experiments failed. They would sit together in that dim workshop, surrounded by wires and batteries, dreaming of a future together. Finally, Mabel's father agreed to fund Alec's experiments, not because he believed in the telephone, but because he hoped Alec would fail, give up, and leave Mabel alone. It was a gamble that would backfire spectacularly. February 14th, 1876. Valentine's Day. Two men are racing to the patent office in Washington, D.C. Alexander Graham Bell's lawyer is running through the streets, carrying patent application number 174,465 for a device to transmit speech electrically. At almost the exact same time, another man named Elisha Gray is filing a caveat, a legal notice that he's working on the same invention. Bell's application is stamped at the patent office just hours before Gray's. Hours. Some historians believe it was less than 2 hours. If Bell had stopped for lunch, or if his lawyer had been stuck in traffic, Elisha Gray would be famous today, and Bell would be a historical footnote. But filing the patent was just the beginning. Bell hadn't actually built a working telephone yet. He had the patent, but not the proof. For the next 3 weeks, Bell and Watson worked day and night, surviving on coffee and determination. They had to make the telephone work before anyone discovered they'd patented something that didn't exist yet. That's when we return to March 10th, 1876. The acid spill. The desperate cry for help. And Watson hearing those words clearly through the receiver. But Bell's troubles weren't over. When he demonstrated the telephone at the 1876 Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia, most people thought it was a parlor trick. Scientific American magazine called it interesting, but ultimately useless. Then something unexpected happened. The Emperor of Brazil, Dom Pedro II, was touring the exhibition. He was exhausted and ready to leave when someone told him about Bell's strange device. Dom Pedro recognized Bell. He'd seen him teaching deaf children in Boston and was impressed by his work. The Emperor picked up the receiver. Bell spoke into the transmitter from across the room. To be or not to be, that is the question. Dom Pedro dropped the receiver in shock and shouted, Meu Deus, ele fala. My God, it talks. That moment changed everything. If the Emperor of Brazil said it was important, then it was important. Newspapers around the world ran the story. Scientists lined up to see the telephone. Investors who had laughed at Bell suddenly wanted in. Within a year, Bell had installed the first telephone line. Within 2 years, there were telephone exchanges in major cities. Within 5 years, people across America were talking to each other across hundreds of miles. Alexander Graham Bell finally married Mabel Hubbard. They had 4 children and were deeply happy together. Gardiner Hubbard, who had tried to keep them apart, became Bell's closest friend and business partner. But Bell never forgot where he came from. Even after becoming rich and famous, he continued teaching deaf students. When people asked him what his greatest achievement was, he never said the telephone. He said teacher of the deaf. One of Bell's students was a little girl named Helen Keller, who was both deaf and blind. Bell helped her family find a teacher who would unlock Helen's brilliant mind. Helen Keller later wrote, "The little word that opened my world came from Alexander Graham Bell." Bell understood something profound. Technology should connect people, not replace human connection. The telephone wasn't about wires and electricity. It was about letting a mother hear her son's voice, about letting lovers separated by distance still say goodnight, about making the world smaller and humanity closer. On August 2nd, 1922, Alexander Graham Bell died at his summer home in Nova Scotia, Canada. He was 75 years old, surrounded by his family. On the day of his funeral, at 6:25 p.m. Eastern Time, every single telephone in North America went silent. For 1 full minute, 13 million telephones carried no voices. It was the greatest tribute ever paid to an inventor, a moment of silence using the very technology he had created. Then at 6:26 p.m., the phones came back to life and 13 million conversations resumed, connecting millions of voices across the continent, just as Bell had dreamed. Today, billions of people carry phones in their pockets. We video call across oceans. We send our voices around the world in seconds. Every time you speak to someone far away, you're using technology that began with 3 words in a Boston attic. Mr. Watson, come here. Alexander Graham Bell proved that the human voice is our most powerful tool for connection. And you're developing that same power right now, learning to express yourself clearly and confidently in English, connecting with millions of speakers around the world. Incredible work. You just learned English through one of history's most dramatic invention stories. Your homework: watch this video multiple times. First time, just enjoy the story. Second time, shadow along with every "shadow with me now" section. Third time, try shadowing the entire story. Each time, your English gets stronger. Quick question: which moment grabbed you most? The acid spill and first phone call? The race to the patent office? Dom Pedro's shock? The silent tribute? Comment below. Remember, Bell taught deaf children to speak and invented the device that connected their voices to the world. You're on the same journey, finding your English voice and connecting it to millions of speakers worldwide. Hit subscribe for more dramatic stories that supercharge your English. Next time, another incredible life, another English breakthrough. Keep shadowing, keep connecting, keep growing.